What is up, booktube? It is Monty, and today I am back again once again with the start of another video. As you have noticed, this has really just become a wrap-up channel. And I can't say that I'm entirely upset about that because, as y'all know, I have long decried the fuckification of booktube by the reading vlog. That said, if you are interested in reading vlogs, down below there's a link to the Patreon, which is kind of where all of that content is currently living. In the month of May and every other month, I just do daily vlogs over there. And then once a month, just regularly, they get to vote on a book for me to pick. So that's the perks of being over there. If you just want to know what I've been reading and my thoughts on the things that I'm reading, you can just stay over here. And I feel like this is kind of where the channel is going to be from now on, where maybe occasionally I'll pop up with the book review, but the reading vlogs are probably going to live behind that $3 paywall. Yeah, this is how things are going to go. But with that little disclaimer out of the way, let's get into the wrap up. Now, I do feel like I should embarrass myself a little bit. So in the month of April, I think it was Shay Geeks Out. Is that the name of the channel? I don't know. I'm not subscribed. So her or them, I don't know their pronouns. So them and Izzy from Happy From Now, Bree from Lockbooktition, and Ashley from Bookashrow, obviously. I think I got all the co-hosts in there. They were doing like a 30 and 30 for manga, and I don't read manga, so I said, oh, I'm gonna read like 30 novels. I did not read 30 novels, spoiler alert. But that was kind of the ambition that I went into this little daily vlogging. It wasn't even, this is the other embarrassing thing, like the daily vlogging on Patreon just really quickly devolved into like a daily update moment. But we did get almost every day, which is the most successful I've been in a daily vlogging endeavor, because I completely failed in February, and my first attempt at Vlogmas was also not the moment. But I digress. So the goal was to read 30 books in the month of April. I did not read 30 books. I think I rounded up somewhere around 15. Might have been even 13. I kind of forget. And at first I was feeling a little dejected by that. And then I looked at my stats because I had read 22 books in March. And then I looked back at my spreadsheet for the month of February, where I was also daily vlogging for the patrons, and I read the exact same number of books. And so that made me feel a little bit better, knowing that between reading and updating people and filming and editing videos, like that just seems to be the number of books that I can read. We'll see in June if I can improve that number. In the month of May, I'm just kind of trying to read whatever I want to read, take it easy, because I know that in June I'm going to go back to that, filming every day grind. So with all of that preamble out of the way, let's talk about the actual books that I actually read and my thoughts on them. The first thing that I picked up was Bring It On, the complete story of the cheerleading movie that changed like everything. No, seriously, by Casey Wickman. That's kind of what I went with. And this is a nonfiction novel. It's a nonfiction book that is split into two parts. So the first part of the book is kind of the behind the scenes, the filming of Bring It On, the original, the one that started it all. And then the second part of the book, so part one and part two. Part two is about the legacy of the movie and its impact on the kind of pop cultural landscape and the way that this was a movie that was made for like $20 million. It's been a month since I read this book. Over a month. It was like the very first thing that I read. And so it was like a movie that was made for very little money that went on in like early 2000s dollars to completely earn back its budget that first weekend at the box office and kind of blew up. And then the second part of the book I was more interested in. Like the first part was like, okay, cute, like I'm learning behind the scenes moments, but that kind of felt like a retread because in I want to say 2015, Casey Wickman had like made a blog post about the making of Bring It On for, I think it was like MTV.com. And it kind of just felt that like, it was obviously longer than a blog post. This first part of the book, it was, might have been like 150 pages or so. So it was substantial. There was a lot of information there, but it just kind of felt like that blog post that just got lengthened a little bit and we threw in some pictures and things. And so while it was interesting, and I appreciated it, I would have liked this book if it had been more about the legacy and the impact of the movie, if like part two had just been a longer situation. And so It is what it is. I ultimately wound up giving this book 4 stars because I did enjoy it. It is a book that I would purchase for myself and like reread and kind of annotate because I got this from the library. And so, like, I would recommend it if you're a bring it on person. The next book that I read was The Hole We're In by Gabrielle Zevin. At the end of April, I think it was like at the end of March, Gabrielle Zevin went like back on tour, and one of her stops was in Wichita, and I was like, I don't live in Wichita, but I can drive to Wichita. And so I drove to Wichita to get my copy of Tomorrow and Tomorrow signed. So now I'm the proud owner of a signed copy of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And I love that for me personally. And while I was there, I said, you know what? I should probably read a Gabrielle Zevin book. And oh, I also got a copy of like Young Jane Young, which I also gave 5 stars last year, but not the point. And so I picked up The Hole We're In because I was intrigued. This is also, I do also do a disclaimer. The little bookshop where they was being held, they did have a Gabrielle Zevin table. And so I guess I could have looked. But The Hole We're In has low-key been out of print since it was published. The only reason I was able to read this book was because it was available on Audible. So I used my little free credit to get this book. And I liked it. I liked it a lot. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars. And of Gabrielle Zevin's like backlist, this is probably where I'm going to stop because all the other books, I've told you now, this is the third Gabrielle Zevin book that I've read that I give him 5 stars to, and I firmly believe that Gabrielle Zevin cannot write a bad book. But I'm really not interested in testing that theory. I really don't want to find the bad Gabrielle Zevin book. So 3 5 stars. I'm gonna call it like we're good. Going forward, I will continue to read. I don't know if I need to go going back because The Whole We're In is the only one that sounded interesting. And so this is set around the early 2000s, right before the financial collapse, the recession, all of that stuff. And so we're following this family where the dad is like a preacher man and the mom, she does have a job. I think at first she's like a cleaning person or she's a temp. And the real at the center of the story is this family and their relationship with money and the fact that none of them are very good with it and they're always kind of living just above their means and the way that this financial instability has impacted their lives. And so we start off with, this dad and the mom and their small children, and eventually the story kind of moves and so the children become the main characters. I said this in my Goodreads review, I think, and if not, I definitely talked to it with the patrons where when I was reading Crossroads last year, everyone was like, this is the most amazing book ever, like yada, yada, yada. But when you read The Whole We're In and then you go back and you read Crossroads, there's a lot of overlap there. There's a lot of overlap. And like I said, The Whole We're In by Gabrielle Zevin has been out of print low key for a very long time. And it's shorter than Crossroads. Crossroads is a longer book. But I feel like Jonathan Franzen has read Crossroads. And if you are going to read Crossroads, I definitely think you should check out The Hole We're In. It is low-key coming back into print, I think in next month in June. But the audiobook is already available, probably because they just never took the audiobook down. But you'll be able to get like a paperback in June. So if you haven't read it, I definitely think you should read it. And then when you're done reading it, go read Crossroads and tell me I'm lying. Then I got back on the struggle bus. Okay. Then I read Ruthless Faye by Carolyn Peckham and Susan Valenti. This was a horrible decision. So I went into the month of April with a game plan. Y'all know I wanted to read 30 books in 30 days. It was going to be a moment and it was going to be a time to be alive, right? It was not really a time to be alive. It was a time of failure. And part of my strategic planning was I was going to this was also when I was like, oh, I'm going to repurpose something for the patrons over here for y'all. That didn't happen because I read Ruthless Faye and I just gave up. But part of my strategy was I was going to read books that Erin had read from Booked and Busy that she had enjoyed. And I was going to like give her a little like redemption moment maybe because, when she chose my TBR last year, everything was a bad book. There was no shining star on a hill, except for Portrait of a Mirror. If you haven't read Portrait of a Mirror by A. Natasha Tchaikovsky, what is wrong with you? Go read that book. It's excellent. It's brilliant. You need to read it. But I said, I'm going to read Ruthless Faye. And this book was just bad. It was so bad. There was nothing about this book that I liked. Nothing about this book has stuck with me. There's no reason that I think anybody needs to pick this up. And it's not even that I thought the first book was good. I just thought the first book, it did what it needed to do, like it was a book. But the second book, it didn't improve anything. Like, it didn't really change my mind. And so it's kind of like, this was just not worth my time. Like, these are characters who are in a college, but they're going to detention. This book does circle a lot around their romantic connections with one another. And I just found it really hard to believe that in the previous book, y'all were trying to murder these people. And then even in this book, people are trying to, I mean, not only were they trying to murder people, they were taking detention for murder. Anyway, then in this book, everyone wanted to have a sob story. Everyone wanted to have like this really taut, fraught, familial relationship with their parents, and their daddies were doing them wrong. It was really fucking stupid. And then we had this character in here who was like working with these attempted murderers, talking about, oh, I don't believe in the monarchy, so I have to hate you. While meanwhile, trying to get these four murderers to be the new kings. Like, the book just doesn't make sense. It's not very good. It's not worth anybody's time. I understand, like, on Kindle Unlimited, if you just are paying your like $3.99, $2.99, whatever, 99 a month, or maybe you're on a free trial, because Kindles, I always see ads for fucking free Kindle Unlimited, 2 months free, 3 months free. There's probably been a 6 month free at some point. So like, I understand if you're on Kindle Unlimited and like it's really not worth your time, like whatever. And I got it from the library, so it's not like I spent my hard-earned money on this either. But I just feel like this was bad. And I think that there's good things in Kindle Unlimited. I've read good things in Kindle Unlimited, but this was just Carolyn Peckham and Susan Valenti. Just no. So I needed something better, and this was the winner of my Patreon pick, or the poll. So I read Rogue Justice for the patrons, and this book was 5 out of 5 stars. 5 out of 5 stars. This is a true direct sequel. So if you haven't already read the first book, While Justice Sleeps, there we are following Avery Keene. She is a law clerk at the Supreme Court, and one of the justices, I don't think it's this, I don't know, it's definitely not the Chief Justice, it's an associate. So one of the associate justices, like, is out of commission. I think he's in a coma. And they find out that his power of attorney has gone to this law clerk. And so in While Justice Sleeps, there is this big thing happening surrounding a court case, let's say. I don't think that's a spoiler. And so you're following her on this journey, trying to uncover why she is the associate justice's power of attorney, what is going on here, what is happening. And over the course of that book, some major things happen. Like, some major things are revealed. Characters do things that you're like, I don't know if you should be doing that. It was a wild time. And so in Rogue Justice, part of the plot is definitely new. There's a whole new thing surrounding another conspiracy of these dead judges, but it's also directly tied in. Well, not directly tied in, but the events of the first book are still like, they're still happening. Like, there was a bombshell in the first book that we just have to address. And so part of the second book is addressing that while also addressing this other thing. Excellent. I don't know where Stacey Abrams finds the time to do all of the things that she does. Go read this book. Go read this book. I don't know what her romantic suspense books that are getting republished and repackaged are like, but these books, the little Avery Keene, I'm going to continue to read them. Excellent work here. And so then I remembered that Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Wong came out. And I said, let me read Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Wong, because this is about a woman who is going to work for a like nutraceutical company, for the rich and the famous. They go there, they get their little super vitamins, they get these special spa treatments, but there's something off about the whole operation. And so the entire book, you're just, more and more things are off about this book. I'm not a weird book girly. I have never claimed to be in the weird book hive. I don't read weird books. I don't touch weird books. I didn't know that Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Wong was going to be a weird book, but this is excellent. This is excellent. Constance Wu has like already optioned it, and it's in production, like pre-production. I mean, now there's a writer's strike, so like we ain't never gonna see it, but there was a moment in time where this was going to be adapted, and I would be interested. I would be seated, because the things that happen in Natural Beauty, the reveals that happen, I was not prepared. I was not prepared for this little girl who grew up being a highly accomplished classical pianist, going to these fancy schools, coming to work for this little nutraceutical company, giving out these like spa treatments to the fabulously wealthy. I was not prepared for where the story goes. I don't think you guys are prepared for where the story goes, but to tell you where that story goes would be a massive spoiler. And I think that a lot of the enjoyment about this book is not full. Well, part of it I think is not being prepared for how weird the book is, but I think even knowing that the book is weird is really not enough of a disclaimer. But 5 out of 5 stars, excellent, no notes. Can't wait to see what this author comes out with next. And then people of the internet, people of BookTube, I made a mistake. And the mistake that I made, we already knew I made a mistake because I trusted Aaron with Ruthless Faye. But before the month even started, I agreed that I would do some buddy reading with Aaron. And I already tweeted this. But if Aaron ever asks you to buddy read a book, I need you guys to just say no. Particularly if it's a book in a genre that Aaron does not read, if it is a book she has not read. I'm not sure that she is the best person to get a book recommendation from, if you're me. Maybe other people have had better luck. You know, I know that Aaron did really well with Steph's Read It Down. You know, I think she won last year, got the most points. I love that. But Aaron and book recommendations with me, always a miss. So I agreed to let Aaron talk me into reading Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. And this was a horrible book. Horrible book. This is a multiple perspective story that I didn't know was multiple perspectives going in, because the entire first part of the book is about Ajay, and he is a poor boy who gets sold off, who is low-key in slavery at one point, then he's, free. It's all about his little life. And then abruptly at the 25% mark, the book becomes multiple perspective, and we're supposed to be caring about this completely other character. And the book itself really revolves around Sunny, who is a major factor in Ajay's life. The book just isn't good. It's just not good. I think it's been called literary fiction. It's not literary fiction. I've been told that I think the premise, like on the sleeve, like on the summary, is about this little car accident where a person or a family is found dead, and the ways that branches out and impacts all these other people, or how we got to this moment. And those are definitely things that are in the book. We definitely understand how that moment came to be. We understand the characters involved and why they got to be where they were and their relationship to these things. But so many of the things that characters do in this book just don't make any fucking sense. Like, I'm sorry. We can talk about desperation. We can talk about, just magnetic personalities, but it just nothing about this book clicked for me. There's nothing about this book that I think was particularly, let's take it back. The first part of the book, when it was just Ajay and we were, in his life and we were seeing all the ways that he had suffered, it was interesting and it was compelling. But the moment we started getting all these other characters who were equally, just stupid, like there's a journalist character who just doesn't make any fucking sense. I'm sorry. Like, there's a moment in the book where she is low-key fearing for her safety, but she drives out to the middle of fucking nowhere, hours away from where she lives, falls asleep in this office, and then is told, oh yeah, the meeting you're here for, you can't attend that meeting. The person already left. And this is already after, like, an intermediary told her to go to this place when the character she was trying to meet has never really used an intermediary. And so now she's asleep in this office building hours away from where she lives. Now she's driving back through the middle of nowhere and she's like, oh, there's a pair of headlights behind me. I just wanted her to die. Like, at some point, you just are too stupid to actually live. And it was just a little bit foolish for me. And so I think Age of Vice was a Good Morning America pick, and I'm learning that having a Good Morning America sticker is probably the biggest red flag in publishing at this current moment. Right behind that is a Jenna sticker. I like Jenna because, she picks out some backlists sometimes. It's not always a frontlist book, but her books are not good. And Good Morning Americas are, if you see that sticker, run. That's just me personally. It is what it is. I think I've had the best luck with Reese and I. We seem to see eye to eye sometimes. But Good Morning America is always some foolishness. I took a little bit of break after reading Age of Vice, and a couple days later, I picked up 16 and Pregnant by Lala Thomas. In my Goodreads review, I made it clear that I never watched 16 and Pregnant. I was not really that kind of reality show girly. If I'm watching a reality show, I need to have a competition component. It doesn't have to be the world's most complicated, competition. I'm down for Project Runway. I'm down for I Love New York. I just need some kind of competition. There's no competition in Teen Mom except for or 16 and Pregnant and then Teen Mom. So it just, I don't know. I feel like the title is not the greatest, and I feel like I would have gone for something else. Anyway, this is a story set in Las Vegas. We're set in the great state of Nevada, and we're following, what are their names? Erica and I want to say it's Kelly. Is it Erica and Kelly? Let me open this up. Yes. So Erica is our, I would say, the primary protagonist. So we do get both their perspectives. So at the beginning of the book, it's Erica that is pregnant. She has a longtime boyfriend who's kind of a fuck boy, kind of bad news, and she is very worried. And so the first part of the book is her mother. We know that her mother really wants her to get an abortion. We know that, and I do have to say that your body, your choice. Um, your body, but again, it was really hard for me, for Monty, to be like, yeah, girl, you should have this baby. Like, it was really hard for me to root for her to have this baby. I was trying. It took every fiber of my being to be a reader who was not judging this little girl for wanting to keep this baby, because in my mind I was like, what are you gonna do? She ain't got no job. She's still in school. She's doing well in school. Like, that's the thing. I think she wants to open a hair salon, and she has this entire plan. And I'm like, and the man, what really boiled down to me was, you don't really got loan on. Your mom is already like stretched super thin, trying to support you and your younger brother, and the man that knocked you up is really not around. So it's very realistic in that approach. And we do get to see her going to the clinic, and we get to see her talking to the doctor, and the doctor is very supportive of her. The doctor is a lot better person than I am. As I said, that's why you do that job and I do this job, because I couldn't have been saying the things that she was saying, but she was doing a good job, and I liked that about her. What I think I really liked about this book was, I don't think the book ever judged Erica for wanting to keep this baby. I was judging her, but the book wasn't. And the book was also being very forthright with a lot of the complications that you can experience, not only as a young mom, but how you can experience those things as a Black woman. And, the medical field, they might not catch it. And so there was a lot of that in the book, which I also appreciated, because I thought that was nice. And, eventually, our girl Erica, she running around out here trying to hide this pregnancy. And I will say that I don't think it's a spoiler to say the pregnancy comes to light. Like, she ain't one of them people who winds up on, I didn't know I was pregnant, and the mom is like, what is happening? Eventually, she finds out that, Erica's pregnant. I think she just waits until she can't get an abortion anymore, and her mom finds out, or something. And once the mom did find out, I did appreciate the way that the family reacted to that. It wasn't a situation of like horribleness. So like everything in the book was really good in that regard. And then you had Kelly, who for a lot of the book I felt was a little bit superfluous. She was an interesting friend, but it was all, she felt really there to show how, when you are, her and Eric had been like this, she goes to Kelly's house and calls Kelly's mom almost, it's kind of that friendship. And so seeing Kelly for a lot of the book, I was like, why is she here? And in the back of my mind, I kind of guessed why Kelly was there. And ultimately, I did appreciate having that friendship in the book because it also offered a different parental relationship, because the relationship that Kelly and her mom have is very different than the relationship that Erica and her mom have. And so seeing that kind of played out across the story was interesting. And so I did wind up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. There's just a couple of things, like the pacing was a little bit off. We do follow her for the entire pregnancy, and so some of that felt a little bit but overall, I do think this is a really good book, and I'm kind of gagged that it hasn't been more widely read. That feels very strange to me. Then immediately after 16 and Pregnant, I read Briarcliff Prep by Brianna Peppins. This book came out last year. It came out from Hyperion. And so I have to say that for a book with literal prep in the title, I have seen a lot of questionable books get blown up just because they're set out of boarding school. And so I do find it very interesting and very telling that Briarcliff Prep, a book at a boarding school with prep on the cover, prep in the title, it's giving very prep school, is not being read on this app. It's not being read by the booktubies. Where are y'all at? Like, It's very telling to me. Now, this is a book that I gave 3.5 stars. And I round up to 4 on Goodreads just because I had a good time. But this is a book where I'm not sure that I'm personally a fan of stories where the kind of narrative heft is not with our protagonist, but with the side character. And so in Briarcliff Prep, we are watching our main character, whose name is also escaping me. I want to say it's like Avi. Oh, it's what I want to say. Let me see here. Yeah, Aviel. So Aviel LeBeau comes from a big black family, and everybody in her family, her older siblings, both go to these prestigious all black boarding schools in the South. And so we are following her. This is also a book with a 14-year-old protagonist, like a younger main character. Now, the storyline is a little bit older. I do think it's appropriate for 14-year-olds to read. Nothing about this book I think is inappropriate. So we're following Aviel. She's going to boarding school for the first time. So it's a lot of fish out of water. It's a lot of finding new friends. It's a lot of connecting with people. That's all very cute. But the center of the story is seeing Aviel suspecting that her older sister is in an abusive relationship, and kind of what is that supposed to mean? What is happening here? Like, how she wants to help her sister, how she's supposed to help her sister. That does take up I want to say significant portion of the story, but it's definitely it's at least a B plot, because a lot of the plot is also, Aviel trying to fit in, trying to make friends, go about her day, that kind of a thing. It's very that, but at the very significant plot of the book is this domestic abuse relationship between Aviel's older sister and this boy that she is dating. I don't think there's anything particularly graphic that happens between them over the course of the relationship, but it is definitely something that is present and it is accounted for, and it's not shied away from. But again, framed in a lens that I think is appropriate for the young adult audience that the book is written for. And so I think that when I look at it that way, I understand why, but then people read dark academia about these like raggedy ass men who have no talent, these raggedy people in a theater troupe who have no talent, who are just like bored cutouts of people murdering somebody. You know what I mean? Like, so like the subject matter is a little bit dark. But even like a lesson in vengeance. That was a dark academia book. Like, there's like YA dark academia where like murder is still a thing, or like darker aspects are still a thing, and they get pushing attention. And then we have like this all black boarding school book that y'all are just sleeping on. And so I do think it's very strange, particularly when the book is good and y'all are always out here talking about how we're pushing young readers out of YA, and like this is a book that is specifically for them, and y'all could be out here talking about how good the book is, and it has like 20 ratings on Goodreads. Even 16 and Pregnant is a book that I think if it had a better title might have more things on Goodreads, but like combined, Briarcliff Prep and 16 and Pregnant have like maybe 500 reviews and ratings. It's very strange to me. I think y'all are very weird for that, and I think that it's very telling. I continued on my journey in the month of April with Homebodies by Timby Denton Hurst. This is a book that I went into it thinking would be one way, and then it was completely different. So I went in with the expectation, I don't know, and the further I get away from this book, the weirder I don't understand why I thought it was going to be this way. But I really went into this thinking that it was going to be kind of like Yellowface, in that it would be a meditation on race in America, and this would be particularly through the lens of like a black woman, because the premise of this book is our main character, Mickey, is working at a magazine and she gets fired or something happens, and so she writes this manifesto about being a black woman in the media industry or whatever, and it goes off. Like, that's the pitch that I got from, I think it was from Libro or Goodreads, wherever. And it's a very simplistic take on this book, because I think the book is a lot more complicated than that. And this book is now out, came out on May 2nd. So you guys should be able to go out and get this at your library or local bookstore, wherever you get your books. But this is a much more complicated tale than that. And it is also somewhat slice of life. Like, it's a very snapshot image of Mickey. So at the beginning of the book, we see her at this magazine that she works at. We see an instance or a couple of instances of at the very beginning of the book, we see Mickey at an industry party, and the other black woman in the office, she comes over and says, "Hey girl, my friend interviewed for your job." And so we see Mickey understanding that like something is going to happen, something is not going to go well here. And so then we see her a couple chapters later ultimately get terminated. And so what happens after that is Mickey in this kind of like a spiral of like what it means for her. She is in a relationship with someone. It's a sapphic relationship, so this book is sapphic. And if I was I want to say a lesser person, but I feel like the girlies are always asking for some black sapphics. And while this isn't a romance, and I do think that Mickey's love interest in this book was on some fuck shit, some unforgivable fuck shit. This is ultimately Mickey is a sapphic character, and I think that that is explored in a way that I don't often see, even in adult books that I just happen to read. Like, not even like adult romances, but like even the adult contemporary lane that I stick in, I feel like this is not something that I see. And the way that these characters are sapphic is not a way that I always see. And the way that their sapphicness is explored and the way that each of them relate to their identity. Anyway, go read Homebodies. But the short of it is, this kind of manifesto element of the plot is present at the beginning, but I don't think that it plays out in quite the way that I expected it to. And it ultimately more reminded me of Mame by Jessica George. And this is another situation where I think that it's not as, like, I think that The Hole We're In and Crossroads are just, they share a lot of very similar plot beats. But I think that Mame and Homebodies are in conversation with each other, in that Mame is about the Black British experience and Homebodies is about a Black American sapphic experience, in the ways that each of them have similar issues at their workplace that they have to overcome and ultimately deal with, and ramifications of that and their own kind of journey. So I think that Homebodies and Mame would also be an interesting pair to read. I was going to make a whole video at some point where it's not like if you like this, read this situation, because I don't know if you like because I hated Crossroads and loved The Hole We're In. And it's not even that I think that you can't like both of them or hate both of them. I just thought that they were, again, like in conversation with one another. So if you like Homebodies, read Mame. If you've already read Mame, because it's been out for a minute, and it was, I think Mame was the Jenna pick, so a lot of people read it. If you've already read Mame and you're looking for something similar, Homebodies is right here and it's out now. Then I read a book simply because the cover of this, like the title of this book, was too good for me to ignore. Okay, so the title of this book is Empty Theater, or The Lives of King Ludwig II of Bavaria and Empress Sisi of Austria, Queen of Hungary, cousins, and the pursuit of connection and beauty, despite the expectations placed on them because of the exceptional good fortune of their status, beloved national figures, with speculation and into the mysterious nature of their deaths. A novel by Jack Jems. This book started off so good, started off so high. I think I wound up giving this 3 stars on Goodreads, because despite how much I enjoyed it and the ways that I was talking to my patrons about this book, ultimately, I cannot give this higher than a 3 stars, because at a certain point, despite the fantastical nature of these people's lives, it really just read like a recitation of the facts. At the beginning of the book, it was funny. Like, it's supposed to be the satirical look at these people. It's supposed to have some humor to it. And I do think that the way that the book is formatted makes it really easy to read and easy to get through. But I feel like this was misplaced calling it a novel, because nothing about this book really reads like a novel. There are moments that are obviously conversations between characters that are clearly fictitious. It's like watching The Crown. Like, okay, sure, like these major events happened, and maybe these are the conversations that were had about these major events, or the way that these people felt about these things that were occurring around them. So like, there's a believability to the way that the conversations happen. But I also felt like there was, at a certain point, I don't really feel like there was a whole lot of conversations that were happening. It was more introspective. And I guess even that is, novelization, because how can you really know what these people felt? But it really just did feel like very cut and dry here are the facts. And then the closer we got to these people's deaths, the more just fact it felt. I do think that I went into this expecting these people to have like been married or something, and I'm very happy that it's remained cousins. But they were both very interesting people, and so I do think that it's worth reading. I haven't listened to the audiobook. In my head, I feel like this would be a good one. But either way, if you're looking for something interesting, Empty Theater might be for you. Um, it could be. Could be. I think you might have a good time there. Then I read The Neighbor Favor by Christina Forrest. And I have to say that I'm kind of kicking myself because the only reason I read this book was so I could watch and participate in the Lily Reads Book Club discussion. And I was off on that day and I just completely forgot that they were doing the discussion and I didn't tune in. So I read this book that I didn't like and I gave 1 star to participate in a discussion that I completely missed. So this is me retroactively participating in the discussion. I did not like this book. I did not like this book at all. And I was kind of gagged by how much I didn't like it because I'd read some Christina Forrest. I think I read the blue one. I'm Gonna Be Where You Are. Is that the name of that one? With the girl in the car and she's sticking out. That was a fun time. And then I read Zyla and Kai, which was a little bit foolish, but overall fine. Okay, sure, I'm here. And so I expected The Neighbor Favor to be interesting. And then I realized that this book just does a lot of things that I don't like in a romance, and I just can't forgive that. So part of that is me for sure, but part of that I feel like is the execution of this book. So here we're following Lily and Nick. So at the beginning of the book, the first few chapters are all email correspondence. It is Lily. She's having a bad day at work. And every so often, she kind of Googles this little author she found in a bookstore one time, N.R. Strickland. And, just occasionally, he doesn't have a social media presence. And then one day she Googles him and she finds his website that he's now made. And there's a contact form. So she's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you finally have a website. You finally have a contact form. I just wanted to let you know that I write your book and it's my favorite book of all time. And I'm having a really terrible day right now. I'm on the subway and this guy's being a weirdo or something like along those lines. And N.R. Strickland emails her back and was like, I'm sorry you're going through that. It means a lot to me that you read and enjoyed my book. And then they go back and forth for a couple of pages, maybe like 50 pages or so. This little email correspondence. In my head, it was not that long, like the email correspondence. The book kind of made me think that it was at least 6 months. That's what I took away from it. So for 6 months, they're emailing back and forth. They get closer. They start flirting a little bit more. They plan a FaceTime date, and he being N.R. Strickland, he ghosts her. So then the book skips forward 4 months. And Lily has moved out from the place she was living at the beginning of the book, and she's now living with her sister. I think it's Violet. Violet's the one that works at entertainment. And unbeknownst to her, her favorite author also lives in the building, Nick. And so Lily and Nick run into each other on the elevator. And one thing leads to another. And Nick is invited back to her apartment. And they're about to, start kissing and making out a little bit because they're feeling each other. And he starts noticing some small things around the apartment. And he immediately puts together that Lily is the person that he was emailing. But Lily doesn't know that Nick is that person because N.R. Strickland is a pen name. He claimed to be from England, and Nick is walking around because he was born in America with like a regular American accent. And so immediately, right off the bat, Nick knows that Lily is Lily, and Lily has no idea. And so Nick makes a run for it. And Lily at this point is like, what the fuck is going on here? So she chases after him and she's like, hey, even though you clearly don't want me, I need a friend to help me. I need a date to my sister's wedding, because if I don't find a date to my sister's wedding, then they're going to keep putting me up on these dates. And I don't really want to go on these dates. So instead of talking to my sister about how I don't want to go on these dates, I need you to help me find a man, even though she literally just found a man. And I need you to help me with my confidence, even though she's literally chasing after this man she just met and invited back to her apartment and was making out with. And so he's like, sure, I'll help you find somebody to go on this date with. And then the book doesn't really do anything with that. Like, they go to one party together where she could ostensibly find somebody to go on a date with, and everybody at the party has a partner or is gay. Nobody there is single. Not a single soul except her and Nick. And I'm just like, okay. And then the next event they go to is a family reunion. So clearly she's not dating anybody at the family reunion. And then later on in the book, she has a new coworker named Oliver. And she agrees to go on a date with Oliver because in her mind, Oliver looks exactly like N.R. Strickland looked when she was emailing him back and forth. That was the person she envisioned. He's the walking embodiment of it, despite the fact that earlier in the book, she was hated N.R. Strickland, wanted to fight him on sight for fucking her over and leaving her on red. And I just didn't like anything about this book. I didn't like the sisters. I thought the sisters were all foolish. I thought it was very stupid to have like the oldest sister had been married, but her husband was dead, so that was a little sad. But then you have you spend the entire book on this idea that Lily needs to find someone to go to Violet's wedding. I'm not going to spoil anything, but foolishness occurs there. So the family was stupid to me. Lily had no friends. She doesn't have a support group. She doesn't have anybody she can talk to at all. Like, it's very strange to me to be somebody of her age with nobody to talk to. She has no friends. She's not texting anybody. The only connection she seems to have is with Nick. And at a certain point, she doesn't even have that with him. So it's just like, I didn't want her to be in a romantic relationship. I felt like her life was not really to the point where she needed a romantic partner. She just needed to be alone and to like work through some things. And I just ultimately couldn't get on board with Neighbor Favor. And I thought it was a little bit stupid. And I didn't find it swoony or romantic. I found it a little bit pathetic. And at a certain point, it does really feel like a very generic story. Like, I don't think there was anything about this book that really felt like Christina Forrest needed to be the one to write this book, or that this book needed to be written, because I feel like this book already exists. And I ended the month with Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo. I believe I pronounced that name correctly. If I have not, feel free to tell me in the comments. But this is a piece of Nigerian literary fiction that, again, this is after I read this book, I knew I needed to stop. I needed to stop with the Buddy Reads, because this is I skipped a whole book. Why was this not included? Okay, we're gonna have to go back. But Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo. This was a book that I let Aaron talk me into buddy reading, again, before I knew The Age of Vice was a bad book, before I knew this was a weird book. And I think that this book was at least literary. It did at least fulfill that requirement. This is a story about fertility. It's a story about motherhood. It's a story about a woman with a mental illness and the way that impacts her relationship. It's a story about a husband who is, again, kind of fuck shit. Like, he out here doing some messy bullshit and doing things that I don't think anybody could support, and the ways that all of that kind of culminates and impacts the relationship with one another. This went on a turn of events that I could not have foreseen. So we start the book and we see this woman is being greeted by her husband, who has come home. I think it's with his uncle, his mother, and his new wife. So at the very beginning of the book, we know that this man has taken a second wife, which seems to be at least somewhat common practice at the time that this book is set. And the way that has kind of embarrassed and motivated his current wife to secure her place in her husband's life, because she grew up the daughter of somebody who had multiple wives. Her mother died giving birth to her. And so she was raised by a collection of her dad's various wives. And so now she is in this situation where she and her husband have been trying to give, well, at first I don't even think her and her husband really wanted children. But now that he has this new wife, the new wife exists for the sole purpose of providing her husband with a child. And so now his first wife, whose name I have completely forgotten, so we're going to go back to Goodreads, and I'm probably going to butcher her name as well. Yadija. I was saying Yadija. I don't think it's actually Yadija, but that's what it's sounding like in the audiobook to me. But again, apologies to this woman. So Yadija, as the first wife, is like, I need to help my husband Akin get pregnant. And so the way that happens and the journey that this book goes on, I do have to commend, because again, it was actually literary fiction. It was actually doing some really inventive things. There was a lot of creative use of moving into folk tales or stories that I felt like people from Nigeria would know, and then moving back into the narrative and creating a link between those two that I thought was really intelligent. And there was just a lot of things that were happening in this book that I thought were interesting. Definitely interesting. Definitely a compelling read. There's a lot of wild shit that happens. I'm going to say that this book did lose me very early on. At like 28% of this book, we have this woman, we have Yadija, going hiking up on this mountain, breastfeeding a baby goat. And I have to say that when I had to read about this baby goat suckling from her breast, I said, I really understand that she thinks this is the other thing. Is like she really was thinking that the real issue for me, having finished the book, is that like it doesn't make sense for that to be a thing that really happened, because what we ultimately find out, I don't understand like how that would really help her conceive a child, knowing what we know at the end of the book. And I'm not going to tell you what we know at the end of the book, because I do think that while I gave it 2 stars, to me that means it was okay. I do think other people, like, this is a book, if someone said that they gave it 5 stars, I could kind of understand it. But the things that happen in this book, completely wild, completely out of pocket, out of left field. And for me, they lost me at the baby goat. They lost me at the baby goat. I'm sorry. What can I say? There was a lot of interesting things that happened. Akeen and Fumi being the second wife, she added a lot of interesting things into the narrative. And Akeen, I must say that man, he knows what he did. He knows what he did, and he knows why he's fucked up. So ultimately, wild time. And according to Goodreads, I completely forgot to review or add or do something with Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson, because I don't see it listed on my red shelf here where I'm scrolling through. So I'm going to have to go back and fix that. But I did read Pineapple Street. So Pineapple Street was supposed to be a buddy read. Stay With Me, supposed to be a buddy read. And Age of Vice, supposed to be a buddy read. Aaron only read Age of Vice. Anyway, Pineapple Street is the story of 3 women, 2 sisters and their sister-in-law, married into this, in their family, the ways that their own financial situation is kind of impacting their current lives, the ways that they ultimately come to find that they are more similar to each other than they would have previously imagined. This is I think this is also a Good Morning pick. This was a better Good Morning pick than Age of Vice, but ultimately there's no reason. This audiobook at my library, weeks wait, like months, hundreds of people in line for this book. This book has like a 4-day checkout from the library, like the physical 4-day checkout. Again, 20 people deep. To me, if a book in my little town got 20 people deep, it's a big deal in the rest of the country, because no library book in my library got 20 holes deep. So, and I don't get it. Like, ultimately, it was an interesting book. I think I gave it 3 or 4 stars, maybe closer to 3 probably. It was fine. I think that if you've never read this kind of a book, it was good. But for someone like me who reads this book a lot, who's read it in a variety of fashions, who has seen people marrying into wealth and the way that impacts a relationship, and to have read characters who are looking at women who've married into their wealthy family and are giving them the side eye, ultimately to then be like, oh, that's kind of fucked up. And women who have been born into the lap of luxury trying to become, more philanthropic and making up for the sins of their fathers or whatever. It was a good book. It was fine. It was definitely more contemporary than literary. There's no reason for me to understand why this is a book club selection. It's, again, like, anybody could have published this book, and it just kind of feels like the marketing department did a really good job just pushing it, because ultimately it was fine. Like, there's nothing really remarkable about it. It was just a good time. I think that there were some interesting plot twists. Like, there was definitely some things that I didn't necessarily see coming. I'm not gonna lie, like, oh yeah, that was predictable. It's just these people's lives, and if you like books about people's lives, you'll probably have a good time, at least a solid time with it. But there's absolutely no rush to get to Pineapple Street, because once you've arrived, like, you just kind of like, oh, I've seen this before. Like, it's in a different section of the city, and there are, different characters, and, sure, fine, congratulations. But ultimately, it was just okay. I think that April might have been, like, pretty consistently I've been giving my reading month like 4 to 5 stars. And I did read some really great books. Like there was a really good run there of Rogue Justice to Natural Beauty, even to Homebodies. Because once I got to the end of Homebodies and the beginning of the book got contextualized differently, it was good. But I'll take back to back 5 stars, like Rogue Justice and Natural Beauty, 5 stars. Overall, I would give my reading month a 3. I've definitely had better in the month of 2023, but I'm not mad at it. Like I'm still having a good time. I'm still looking forward to reading things. So I'm still taking it slow though. Like I've only finished one book this month. So I will pick up the pace eventually, but we're not talking about May just yet, thankfully. So feel free down in the comments to let me know your favorite book that you read in the month of April. And I'm just going to end it here. So thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next month with my next wrap up. Again, if you want to see me before then, you can head over to the Patreon and I'll see you over there. But until then, and until next time,